Today, learners, we have a magic wand, and we're going to talk about degrees of comparison. Adverbs with degrees of comparison. And this magic wand with a little tiny pumpkin at the end is going to help us do that with magic. I present to you my magician's mug. It's a normal mug, nothing fancy about it at all. But with the magic of adverbs of degrees of comparison, I can say, Shazam! And suddenly, it's a much bigger mug. Not just bigger, much bigger. Degrees of comparison. You could have a little mug or a big mug or a much bigger. It's a much bigger mug. That's amazing because of the magic of comparison. Let's try one more because it's not always bigger. Right here, I have one of my wife's supposedly priceless antiques. And this one will tell you it is baking powder. Baking powder. It's a huge container of baking powder. However, with my magic wand and adverbs of degrees of comparison, I can say abracadoodly swap, and it becomes a tiny container of baking powder, a much smaller. This is much smaller than the previous container, and that's a big deal. We're not just saying it's smaller, we're saying it's much smaller. If the old one was 10 inches high and the next one was 9 inches high, that's smaller. But this one is much smaller. It's a degree of comparison. A little different, a little more, much, very much, and a lot. These degrees matter. I'm going to show you one more. We're going to take a funny hat. And I have a huge head, so hats never look good on me. And I can put on this funny hat. However, if I say abracashlammo, it becomes this even funnier hat. How do I do that? With adverbs of degree of comparison. We don't say things are just smaller or funnier or sillier. We say how much sillier they are. That was a pretty silly hat. But on my head, this is an even sillier hat. It's a very silly hat. It's very much sillier. It is hugely sillier because it's degrees of comparison. I am a tall person. Wilt Chamberlain is very much taller. And I'm just plain adorable. But my wife is very much more adorable because of degrees of comparison. Think about it. Get in our WhatsApp group, write me a letter. Tell me about a degree of comparison, preferably while wearing a hat that's far less silly than this one. Stay safe, learners. Wash your hands, wear a mask, stay inside. We'll see you all in class soon.